I want to go ahead and get into the big announcement that happened today, and that was for the DC Cinematic Universe. James Gunn and Peter Safran, who are kind of heading this film division within Warner Brothers, this entire creative division, focusing on films, television, video games, all within the DC universe. And they announced a film slate and a television slate. And, I mean, there's a lot to dissect, a lot to go over. And, before I even share my thoughts on some of these projects, these would-be projects, I just want to go ahead. I just want to go over some of them. We're just going to go over the announcements, chat, one by one. And I'm reading this from The Direct. And I'll just go ahead and just start reading the article. After a long wait, James Gunn and Peter Safran's new DCU slate has finally arrived, and it's jam-packed with exciting character introductions and universe-building potential. During a special presentation via Variety, DC Studios co-CEO James Gunn announced the first chapter of the DCU reboot as DCU Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. So they're, instead of calling them phases, they're calling them chapters. Gunn explained their strategy for developing the slate. One of our strategies is to take our diamond characters, which is Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, triumvirate if you will, and use them to prop up other characters that people don't know. It's a sound strategy. I like that. Sounds good. Safran continued explaining what makes DC Studios different from other production entities. DC Studios is unprecedented. It is a standalone production entity and studio. It is the first time ever that everything DC related, film, television, live action, animation, gaming, it's all centralized under one creative vision, that of James and myself. Gunn brought together a writer's room to build the DCU's shared universe. The Martian writer, Drew Goddard, Moon Knight and Doom Patrol's Jeremy Slater, The Flash and Batgirl scribe, Christina Hobson, Watchmen's Crystal Henry, and comics writers Tom King were all brought together by the DC Studios heads. We sat down in a room for a few days, and we started to bash out what the basic overall plan could be. Not so much that it ties your wrists, but enough that we know what the basic story is, where we're going, and it's something that we'll continue to do. The slate has 11 projects, 10 new titles, plus one Elseworlds, okay? Which include the Superman reboot, a Batman Damian Wayne team-up film, and many more. So I'm going to go down just everything that they announced, kind of brief descriptions, everything, chat. So the first big thing, which is this one, I'm actually, I'm pretty happy about this one. This one sounds good to me, all right? At least on paper. One of the first big movies they're announcing is Superman Legacy. DCU Studios co-CEO Peter Safran revealed that Superman Legacy will mark the start of the DCU, but he mentioned that it's not an origin story, which is great. I'm like, perfect. The upcoming Superman reboot is set to focus on the titular hero trying to balance his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. Safran described the Superman as the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. It's not an origin story. Focus on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He's the embodiment of et cetera, et cetera. He is kindness in a world that thinks that kindness is old-fashioned. I'm like, perfect. I love that. You're nailing it already. That is, as someone, I don't want to, I'm already sharing my opinion right now, but as someone who has suffered through the nihilistic, sociopathic version of Superman that Zack Snyder gave us for 10 fucking years, this is such a wonderful palate cleanser. So I imagine Superman's not going to be dropping skyscrapers on innocent people. Thank God. James Gunn is confirmed to be writing the project, with Safran expressing his hope that his co-CEO can be persuaded to also direct it. Meanwhile, Gunn had this to say about the upcoming movie, centered on the Man of Steel. Superman is for everyone. That's a 4-quadrant film that should speak to everyone in the world. Superman Legacy to be released in theaters, so they have some release dates. That's what's crazy about this shit. I'm like, I figured, but I was right about this. I was right about this. Superman Legacy is set to be released in theaters on July 11, 2025. I figured like the earliest they'd be able to release these movies would be in 2025. Now I don't know if they're going to hold to that release date, because I'm thinking this is probably going to be more of like a fall or winter release, honestly. But I nailed that. I got that right. So everything I just heard about the Superman project, perfect. I was like, yes. This is what Superman needs to be. He needs to be one of the big major cornerstones of your universe, and he doesn't need to murder innocent people. I mean, I don't think that's hard to follow. I mean, DC struggled, Warner Brothers struggled with that for 10 years, but now they have people where they get Superman. I'm like, thank God. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which is a movie. Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is set to take inspiration from Tom King's miniseries, which I'm unfamiliar with Gunn confirming the movie will explore a very different type of Supergirl and be much more hardcore. I'm like, okay. We will see the difference between Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents from the time he was an infant, versus Supergirl, raised on a rock, a chip off of Krypton, and who watched everyone around her die and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life, and then come to Earth. She is much more hardcore and not the Supergirl we're used to. Okay? It is unknown if Krypto the Superdog, who appeared in Kate's comic, will appear in the movie. I mean, I don't know. That is weird. You know, it's almost like they're trying to throw the Zack Snyder Superman fans a bone, where it's like, okay, we're gonna do the traditional wholesome, you know, middle America Superman everyone knows, and then we're gonna do this, I don't know, this hard-edged Supergirl film, which is a little weird for me. You know, the Supergirl movies, well, at least how I've, you know, my exposure to the character was always in the comics. And obviously the animated series, you know, and she was very much not that. You know, I mean, the whole big thing with her is she remembers, like, Clark as a baby, you know, but, you know, because her rocket was, you know, went askew, right? And she arrived at Earth and she was, like, in a hibernation, and he had already grown up. She's like, oh, my God, remember you were a kid. And so that's, like, the whole thing. And so he kind of acts more as a father figure uncle to her in a weird way. But, you know, she's very much not this hardcore person. So this sounds weird and unusually grim for Supergirl. It's not, but again, I think it's them like, all right, well, we kind of want to do, like, we want another Kryptonian character, but we don't want to do the same thing with them. And I'm like, I understand that, but at the same time, that sounds just kind of weird. I don't know. This one I was like, this one raised a red flag for me, chat. I was like, okay, one, you got me. I was like, the Superman budget sounds good. This Supergirl's like, this is very weird take on the character that I'm unfamiliar with. All right, here we go. This is one I'm... the Batman, the Brave, and the Bold. The Brave and the Bold will exist alongside Robert Pattinson's Batman, an Elseworld story set outside the DCU. However, what makes this project different is they'll introduce the Bat Family. I'm like, oh, this sounds great. I'm like, that sounds cool. With Gunn confirming that this version of Robin will team up with the DCU's Batman is Damian Wayne. I'm like, oh, God. Bruce's biological son. Gunn described Damian as our favorite Robin, a little son of a bitch, an assassin, and a murderer. The DC Studios co-CEO said that Brave and the Bold would explore a very strange sort of father-son story about Bruce and Damian Wayne. The Brave and the Bold is inspired by Grant Morrison's Batman comics and Tom King's run. So, I despise Damian Wayne. I just don't understand the character at all. Like, to this day, I'm like, why would Batman tolerate Damian's attitude, his behavior, the fact that he murders people? And it's like, this kind of goes against Batman's whole code. I've never understood the character at all. I get he's hardcore and, punk rock or whatever you want to say, whatever term you want to throw out there. It's just, I am not against I actually would love, I'm like, because that's one of the things I'm like, okay, we can do Robert Pattinson's more disturbed taking the character, he's a detective. But then with the DCU, which I'm like, oh, we're going to explore the Bat Family. It's like, perfect. But then it's like, why not just go with Dick Grayson or Tim Drake? Or if you want to go a little darker and tragic, you could go with Jason Todd, and where Batman has to deal with him, coming back to the Red Hood and the fallout of all that, and that's a tragedy here. Damian Wayne, he's a little shit. Now, I understand why he's a little shit, because he's raised by fucking Ra's al Ghul and Talia al Ghul, and they're assassins. Like, I understand this, but the fact that Batman, I tolerate him being that way, I'm just like, I don't know. This one, the Supergirl thing confused me. I was like, all right. This one, I'm just like, I'm not in favor of this. I hate this character. I don't understand his popularity. It just doesn't make any sense. It's a complete contradiction to Batman. Like, why would he tolerate Damian just outright murdering people? It's like, kids, kids are going to be kids. What are you going to do? I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work. You could have done so many other Bat Family stories with Dick Grayson and Tim Drake, or if you want to go darker with Jason Todd, or hell, Barbara Gordon, the Batgirl. But this one doesn't make any sense to me. I was like, I don't get this. This is very, very weird. Very, very weird. And how Grant Morrison initially introduced Damian, yeah, he's a psychopath. He's a murderer. So I don't get it. Paradise Lost, Wonder Woman prequel HBO Max series, one of the TV projects. Paradise Lost set to explore the Amazons of Themyscira before the birth of Diana. Wonder Woman with Saffron teasing that it has this Game of Thrones-ish story. Okay, Saffron noted that the HBO Max prequel series would expand the Themyscira's political intrigue behind a society of all women. Gunn chimed in saying that the show will look to answer questions about the origin of Themyscira and all of its beautiful and ugly truths. How did that come out? What's the origin of an island of all women? What are the beautiful truths and the ugly truths behind all that? And what's the scheming like between the different power players in that society? Paradise Lost appears to be a callback to Phil Jimenez and George Perez's Paradise Island Lost comics series that explored a civil war in Themyscira. Yeah, this is a surprise. I mean, I figured there'll be a Wonder Woman project of some sort. Yeah, I don't know. A prequel series without Wonder Woman. When I think of that, when I think of like a DC prequel series, I think of things like Gotham. I'm just like, eh. Now I know like that's like CW and stuff, and they're like, hey, they're taking inspiration from Game of Thrones. I think that's cool. I like the idea of exploring that world, especially how Greek mythology mixes in with like modern day, aesthetics and sensibilities. I'm like, that's kind of cool. They've done that in comics. Like, how does like Zeus and Poseidon and Athena all work in like modern DC universe? And I love that. This one, I'm just like, I just don't know. I'm like, okay. All right. I'm not against it. I'm just like, okay, I just show me. I'm kind of going with no expectations whatsoever. So, all right, let's see what this would be like. This one, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. This is totally James Gunn. Booster Gold, HBO Max series. HBO Max's Booster Gold series will explore a new time-traveling hero for the DCU. Saffron described the titular protagonist as a loser from the future. He uses basic future technology to come back to today and pretend to be a superhero. Like the character. Yep. Gunn then added he has the imposter syndrome as a superhero. In the comics, Mike Carter is a disgraced former football star. He uses the time machine to go to the president and become a hero. This comedy series has no release date yet. I mean, this makes sense. Yeah, I mean, this is a character perfect for James Gunn and his sensibilities. And I'm like, yep, this one I have no problem with. Yeah, I'm cool. That's going to be a show. I imagine maybe it'll be similar in tone to something like Peacemaker, which I'm like, perfect. This one, weird. Now, this is one of the ones I'm like, I have never heard of this before. I like to consider myself a fan of the DC comics, knowledgeable in that material. This one I know nothing about. Creature Commandos. The Creature Commandos animated series will explore a modern take on the characters who were first introduced from the pages of DC Comics. In the comics, it was originally a team of classic monsters, namely Frankenstein's monster, a wolf, a werewolf, a vampire, and a Gorgon, fighting Nazis in World War II. However, given that it's described as a modern take, it's likely that a whole new wave of otherworldly characters will be featured. Gunn confirmed that Creature Commandos is already in production with him finished writing every episode. This is one of the things he talked about. That I'm writing a new series right now. This must have been it. Creature Commandos has 7 episodes. Gunn said that shows like Creature Commandos allow their creative collaborators to tell stories that are gigantic, but without spending $50 million an episode. Although the voice cast is yet to be announced, it was confirmed that the top executives are looking to find actors who could portray the live-action versions of these characters down the line. And so this is all one connected universe then. So what happens in the animated show will then reflect what happens in the live-action films. Again, this is one I'm just like, I'm kind of going with no expectations. It sounds fun, I mean, Universal horror movie monsters, as fighting against Nazis. I'm like, all right, okay. It sounds interesting, at the very least. I'll give it a shot. So this is where we're getting into confusing things here. This is where I'm like, what's going on? All right, Waller, an Amanda Waller series, chat. While Peacemaker Season 2 is being put on hold, which I knew nothing about this, by the way, Gunn said that Waller would act as a continuation of that series since Team Peacemaker will appear alongside Viola Davis and Amanda Waller in the upcoming spinoff. At the end of Peacemaker Season 1, Leota Adebayo managed to reveal her mother's, Waller's, secret Task Force X group to the world. This series appears to explore ramifications of that ending. Doom Patrol showrunner Jeremy Carver will serve as executive producer, and writer alongside Watchmen scribe Crystal Henry, really good creative team behind the scenes. Saffron praised Carver and Henry, noting they are crushing it. Agreed. Meanwhile, Gunn described Waller as the greatest show ever. See, now we're getting into some weird stuff here, so this doesn't sound like a complete reboot. Now this is sounding like a halfway measure. You're doing half measures, which is confusing, and this is going to confuse a lot of people. I want to get to this at the end. But I'm like, I'm not against the Waller. I think that's cool. I think Viola Davis is great as the character. She stood out in the first movie. I don't think there was a lot of great material written for her. Not her fault, though. She's great. She's perfectly cast. And the Suicide Squad, even though she has less screen time, I like her in that movie a lot. And obviously in Peacemaker, where she pops in, she's quite good. I mean, she's great as the character. And I love Amanda Waller, from the comics and the animated series and things, and the DCAU. She does a great job. And so, like, hey, she's getting her own project. Cool. But I'm a little confused now, but we'll get to that in a bit. Lanterns. Green Lantern show, just called Lanterns. Fair enough. Bob, because there's going to be multiple lanterns. Anyway, Lanterns will revolve around the two best-known members of the Green Lantern Corps, Hal Jordan and John Stewart, as they investigate a mystery that's expected to play a big role in the main story of DCU's Chapter 1. Sounds like Lethal Weapon to me. Safran described Lanterns as a huge HBO quality event. Okay. That is very much in the vein of True Detective. Okay, close. All right, so not going comedy. We're not going space guy, because I thought we're going to make this a buddy cop. It kind of sounds like a buddy cop thing. I think James is going to be watching my streams. Lanterns is separate from the Greg Berlanti's planned Green Lantern series for HBO Max, which is confirmed to be not moving forward by said, that Greg Berlanti's done with DC. He's done with one. All of his stuff's being canceled, which for good reason. DC Studios co-CEO explained the decision behind the cancellation of Berlanti's Green Lantern series. Greg's version was more of a space opera. Our version is much more true detective, a terrestrial-based investigation. I don't mind that at all. I mean, I like that. They're like, hey, this is fucking space cops, which is what I want, right? I think that's cool. Again, I was always about like, hey, let's really build up Sinestro, and maybe Sinestro will be in the series now. Maybe that makes sense, but he'll be a supporting character. But I don't want him to be the bad guy immediately. Don't do that. I hope they know to build him up over time. But hey, Hal and John working together. I mean, it's still kind of, I guess, his kind of Lethal Weapon is kind of 48 hours, chat. So close, just kind of changing one element of it. It's just like, hey, both of you guys are Green Lanterns now. Boom, you're both worthy. Boom, right off the bat. So that's kind of cool. I like that. Or maybe like it's Hal's the been Green Lantern longer, or maybe it's maybe it's John. It's like, there's a lot to play around. So that sounds good. I still would like a movie though, but hey, if this is gonna be like, hey, a big blockbuster, series, we're giving on this a lot of money. Cool. Now this one I was like, okay, this one excited me. Swamp Thing movie. Swamp Thing is described as a horror film that will mark the end of DCU's Chapter 1. Okay. Safran revealed that Swamp Thing is set to investigate the dark origins of the titular monster through the perspective of horror. Meanwhile, Gunn said the mashup quality of seeing Rocket Raccoon staying next to Thor in Avengers Infinity War would end up being one of the highlights of the MCU's crossover movie. Yeah, he's right. That said, Gunn teased that they're one-upping that approach with Swamp Thing, potentially indicating that the titular monster will cross over the likes of Superman and Batman. This is a much more horrific film, but we'll still have Swamp Thing interact with the characters. I wonder if they're going rated R with this. I'd be curious. They did the Swamp Thing series, which they released and then immediately canceled. I think they even said before he was released, it's like, oh yeah, we're canceling this. And it's actually pretty good. Well, at least what I saw of it. Cool. I never would have thought like a Swamp Thing movie would be like, oh, this is going to be one of the first things. I'm like, oh, really? All right. But yeah, I like that. I like that character. Maybe it'd be a great way to introduce other, potentially darker DC characters like John Constantine and stuff. So there is that. Now we get to some of the weird stuff. I'm just like, all right. The Authority movie. Safran described The Authority as kind of like Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men, saying that they know that you want them on the wall, or at least they believe that. The movie will explore a team of superheroes that utilizes extreme methods of protecting the planet. I'm going to explain the decision why they moved forward with The Authority. This is a weird one. One of the things that DCU is that it's not just a story of heroes and villains. Every film and TV show is going to be about good guy versus bad guy, giant things in the sky comes and good guy wins. While confirming that the movie is being written now, he didn't reveal the screenwriter. Gunn said that he's really excited to bring these characters to life. Okay. And Elseworlds project, the Batman Part 2. That's coming. Harry's the Batman sequels under the Elseworlds umbrella. Mina is set on a different Earth where our pencil reprise role as the Dark Knight is unknown. Which other character will make a comeback? Larry's confirmed that the Penguin series will lead into the sequel. There's actually a whole little fabric of things we're wanting to do. We're doing it with the Penguin, how it comes back into how, and leading the sequel. What the sequel is going to be. Safran expressed his excitement for 2025. Excitement was a very big year for DC. The Batman Part 2 is set to be released on October 3rd, 2025. So the big two releases that year, chat. You have Superman Legacy, the new Superman reboot. And then that's in July. And then later on in the fall, the Batman Part 2, October 3rd, 2025. There were some other things that confused me. So it was also announced by James Gunn and Peter Safran about the status of other characters and actors playing them. They also said that, there will be, possibilities. I think, what was the exact verbiage they used for Like, yeah, it could possible that Gal Gadot could return as Wonder Woman, and also Ezra Miller. Yes, we're looking at it. They're pursuing, the mental health and everything, and there's a possibility that anything could happen. Now, they were being very cagey about their answers with that, and to me, and the reason why I'll just kind of nip this in the bud. It's because those movies are coming out, especially like the Flash movie and everything like that is coming out with Ezra Miller, and they don't want to say Ezra Miller's not the Flash. Even though I wish they would, because I feel like no matter what happens, Ezra Miller's done. There's no way Ezra Miller is going to return as this character, nor shitty, because he's crazy, and his behavior is reprehensible. So I feel like they're like, we just want to say he's not coming back, but they don't want to cut the legs out from underneath that movie, I imagine, chat. So there is that. But people are saying like, oh, he's coming back. Like, I'm sure they want to just say that to rip the Band-Aid off, but I don't want to say it because of the fact that they got a fucking $250 million movie coming out. So that was that. But because of that stuff like that, it leads because so you're keeping some stuff, you're getting rid of other stuff. Because the one thing people are questioning is like, well, wait a minute, if some of these actors are staying, it's like if Jason Momoa is still staying as Aquaman and possibly playing other characters, if you're leaving the door open for Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, which they should recast her, and the Ezra Miller thing, which I don't think he's sticking around. I don't. I think they're just they can't say that he's not because they don't want to again cut the legs off from under the movie. People are gonna start questioning. And then it's like, well, why the hell did you fire Henry Cavill? Because I think that's a narrative that's going to start building. Like, well, these other people that start to wait, then what the hell's with that? Now, listen, I'm saying this as someone who does not like Henry Cavill Superman. I think that is one of the worst live action versions of the character ever. Okay, and I'm like, every time I see him, I'm like, you killed all those innocent people. And I'm just like, it doesn't sit well with me personally, but that's what people are going to bring up. I'm like, yeah, that's fair. That's a fair criticism. It is. My overall reaction to the new announcements, other than just kind of confusion of like, okay, what's staying and what's going, because it's still it's just not a clean cut. It's just not. It's not a clean cut yet, which is weird to me. I like the whole thing of Superman Legacy sounds great. I'm like, perfect. That's a great way to start your universe over again, leading with one of the big defining heroes of the triumvirate. Perfect. They seem to know what they're doing. But then they hear like the Supergirl thing. She's going to be like hardcore. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like Supergirl at all. That's very weird. I despise Damian Wayne. I'm thinking like of all the things you could do with the Bat family, I'm like, and I'm open for that. I'm like, really? Really, Damian? But I can see why Damian Wayne is popular with James Gunn. I don't like him. The rest of this, I'm pretty okay with. I'm surprised some of these big projects. I was like, oh shit, he's gonna go on a horror. The Authority's a weird one. I don't really know what to think about that. I'm not familiar with the characters. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on some of this. I thought this was gonna be more of a clean cut. I think they're gonna be like, all right, let's just start again with the principal. I thought there'd be a couple weird ones, and like, ooh, kind of be experimental and stuff, of course. But yeah, I thought they were gonna be more like, all right, let's use these pre-established heroes, or let's do them right and then move forward. But yeah, it's a little odd to me. I'm mixed on this news. I don't think this is not perfect. Some of this seems like a half measure, which I'm not exactly happy about. So yeah, I gotta mull all this over. Some things I'm liking, other things I have just no expectations. Other things I'm excited about. Other things I'm just kind of confused by, and other things I just outright hate. But what about you guys? How do you feel about these announcements? What do you want to see? What do you think was a missed opportunity? Yeah, I'm curious. How do you feel like this is all going to work? I mean, we'll eventually see in the next couple of years, 2025, really, truly at the earliest, but let me know.